Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I guess I should start by explaining how I ended up in this mess. When I was 13, I started high school like everyone else. I kept my head down and just wanted to get through the day without any drama. But apparently the universe had other plans for me. From day 1 of year 9, this one boy decided I was going to be his target. I don't even know why he picked me specifically. Maybe because I was quiet and he thought I wouldn't fight back. Maybe he thought it was funny. Either way, he made it his personal mission to make my life miserable. It started small. He'd follow me between classes, always walking just a bit too close. Then he started making comments, loud ones. In the corridors, he'd call out that I had a nice backside for everyone to hear. I'd feel my face go red every single time, and my friends would look at me with sympathy. But what could they do? What could I do? Then things got weirder. He wrote a song. An actual song, about how I'd supposedly cheated on him. The thing is, we never dated. We were never even friends. I'd barely spoken to him except to tell him to leave me alone, but that didn't stop him from performing this song to his mates in the cafeteria, laughing the whole time while I tried to disappear into my seat. The worst part was that we lived in the same area of town. One afternoon I was walking home from school, taking my usual route, when I realized he was following me. Not just walking in the same direction, actually following me, staying about 10 feet behind, matching my pace. I sped up, he sped up. I slowed down, he slowed down. Finally, he called out to me, saying to wait up and making a disgusting comment about making me wet. I didn't even know what to say to that. I just started walking faster, practically running the last 2 streets to my house. My heart was pounding the entire time. The next day I went to the school office. I told them everything, the comments, the song, the following me home. I thought surely they'd do something. The administrator listened and nodded along, then gave me the most useless advice I'd ever heard. She said he probably just had a crush on me and that boys at this age don't know how to express their feelings properly. She told me to just ignore him and he'd eventually move on. I wanted to scream. Since when was harassment just boys being boys? But I was too shy, too conflict-averse to argue. So I left the office feeling defeated and went back to just enduring it. This went on for months. Every single day, he'd find me, make some comment, follow me around. And when he wasn't harassing me, he was talking about Marvel, specifically Iron Man. This boy was obsessed. I'm not exaggerating. He had an Iron Man backpack, an Iron Man pencil case, Iron Man posters that he'd show people on his phone. He talked about Tony Stark like they were best friends. It was literally the only thing he cared about besides making my life hell. Then April 2019 came around. Endgame was released and everyone was losing their minds about it. The hype was insane. People were booking cinema tickets weeks in advance, avoiding spoilers like their lives depended on it. I wasn't interested in Marvel films. I'd never seen any of them, and I didn't plan to start. So when my friends went to see Endgame that first weekend, I didn't join them. On Monday, they were all talking about it at lunch. One of them mentioned how she couldn't believe Iron Man died and that she'd actually cried in the cinema. Another friend agreed, saying she'd been sobbing when he did the snap. They went on dissecting every scene while I just nodded along. I wasn't bothered by the spoiler since I had no intention of watching it anyway. The information just sat in my head, not meaning much to me at the time. That same week, the boy who'd been tormenting me got ill. He was off school for a few days, and honestly, it was the most peaceful few days I'd had all year. I could walk through the corridors without looking over my shoulder. I could eat lunch without crude comments being thrown my way. But of course, it couldn't last forever. He came back the following Monday. I saw him in the corridor before first period, and my stomach dropped. He spotted me immediately and made a beeline straight for me. He asked if I'd missed him, grinning like nothing had changed. I told him not really, but he just laughed it off and said, "I love the attention, really." I tried to walk away, but he followed. Then he asked if I'd seen Endgame yet. He said he was going that weekend and couldn't wait because it was going to be epic. He went on about how Iron Man was definitely going to save everyone. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was months of harassment finally catching up to me. Maybe it was the school's refusal to help. Maybe I was just tired of being the kid who took everything without fighting back. I stopped walking and turned to face him. I told him that Iron Man dies at the end. His face went completely blank. For a moment, he just stared at me like I'd spoken a different language. He asked what I'd just said, his voice barely above a whisper. I repeated myself. I told him Iron Man dies and that he does the final snap which kills him. I watched the realization hit him. His expression went from confusion to horror to pure devastation. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. He said I was lying, that there was no way that could be true. I told him I wasn't lying and that my friends had seen it opening weekend. I explained that Iron Man sacrifices himself to defeat Thanos. He kept saying no, insisting I was just trying to mess with him. I shrugged and told him to believe what he wanted. Then I walked away and left him standing there in the corridor. For the rest of that day, he didn't come near me. He didn't make a single comment. He looked absolutely crushed, wandering around like someone had died, which, in his mind, someone had. After he actually saw the film and realized I told him the truth, he avoided me completely. The harassment just stopped. He couldn't even look at me without being reminded that I'd spoiled the most important film of his life. My friends asked me later if I felt bad about it. Honestly, not even a little bit. My boyfriend got me into playing paintball after we met at work. We were both on different teams for this company relay race, and let me tell you, we both wanted to win badly. I beat him that day, and instead of being mad about it, he asked me out. Turns out we're both incredibly competitive people. It's just who we are. After that relay race, we started doing everything together. Laser tag, escape rooms, triathlons, you name it. If there's a competition involved, we're in. Our friends know this about us. They've seen us in action enough times to understand that when we compete, we don't mess around. Most of them are totally fine with it and enjoy watching us go at it. They'll come hang out at events, grab some food, have some drinks, and cheer us on from the sidelines. So about 2 months ago, my boyfriend and I signed up for this paintball tournament. It's something we do a few times a year. We're ranked D4, which means we're decent but definitely not pros. This tournament was going to have mostly D4 and D3 teams, so we knew it would be tough. The prize money for the top 3 teams was pretty good though, so we figured why not give it a shot. We mentioned it to our friend group during one of our hangouts. We told them about the tournament and said they were welcome to come watch if they wanted. There's this whole setup at these events with a bar area and an elevated viewing platform where people can see all the matches. It's fun even if you're just spectating. 3 of our friends said they'd come watch and grab some beers with us afterward. Then one of our friends, let's call her Karen since that's what she turned out to be, said she and her boyfriend wanted to compete too. My boyfriend and I looked at each other. They'd never played paintball before, not even once at a casual place. I told her I didn't think that was a good idea and explained that this tournament wasn't for beginners. Karen brushed me off and asked how hard it could really be. My boyfriend jumped in and tried to explain that it was intense and that most people there take it seriously because of the cash prize. He warned her that she might not have a good time. Karen got defensive and said they weren't idiots and that they could figure it out. We dropped it for the moment, but over the next week we kept trying to gently discourage them. We explained the rules, the ranking system, how fast-paced the matches were. Nothing seemed to get through to them. Finally, about a week before the tournament, we had to be more direct. I told them straight up that we really didn't think they should compete. I reminded them they'd never played before, and that everyone there was going to be way above their skill level. Karen got angry and said they were adults who could make their own decisions. Her boyfriend backed her up and said it felt like we didn't want them there. My boyfriend tried to clarify that we did want them to come, just maybe to watch, instead of compete. Karen dismissed us and said they were signing up anyway. We backed off after that. What else could we do? They were right that they were adults who could make their own choices. We just hoped they wouldn't have a terrible time. Tournament day came and sure enough, Karen and her boyfriend were the only beginners there. During the 2 practice rounds, they got destroyed. I'm talking eliminated within the first minute both times. I felt bad watching it, but they seemed determined to keep going. The bracket for the official matches was random, and wouldn't you know it, we got matched up against them in the first round. My boyfriend looked at me, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing I was. Do we go easy on them? But here's the thing. We warned them multiple times, and this was a real competition with real money on the line. If we threw the match, we'd be disrespecting every other team there who was trying their best. Plus, it wouldn't be fair to Karen and her boyfriend either. They wanted to be treated like competitors, so that's what we did. The match lasted less than 4 minutes. We didn't showboat or anything like that, we just played the way we always play. They barely got any shots off before they were both eliminated. After we won, we tried to give them some encouraging words, but they just walked off the field without saying anything. My boyfriend and I kept competing. We made it all the way to the final round, which honestly surprised us given the level of competition. But then, we went up against this team wearing predator masks, and they were insane. We lost badly, but third place still got us some prize money, so we were happy. After all the matches were done, we headed to the bar area to celebrate with our friends. That's when someone told us Karen and her boyfriend had already left. We figured they were just embarrassed about losing and needed some space. Our other 3 friends were still there, so we had a good time with them for the rest of the day. That evening my phone rang. It was Karen. She immediately started going off about how she couldn't believe us. I asked her what was wrong, and she said we'd completely humiliated them out there and that we didn't have to try so hard. I reminded her that we'd warned her it would be tough and that we played the same way we'd play against anyone. My boyfriend took the phone from me and told her we'd warned them not to compete multiple times. He said we'd insisted they shouldn't enter, and that when they did anyway, we treated them like competitors because that's what they wanted. Karen shot back that we were terrible friends and that we just wanted to embarrass them. The call ended with her hanging up on us. We were both confused and frustrated. We didn't think we'd done anything wrong. The next morning I woke up to a bunch of notifications on my phone. Karen had posted on social media about the whole thing. She wrote this long post about how we tried so hard to beat them only to lose in the end anyway, and made it sound like we'd invited them just to embarrass them. She made us look like these awful people who get off on beating our friends. People started commenting. Some of our mutual friends and even some family members were saying we were selfish and mean. Others who had been at the tournament were defending us, saying Karen was overreacting and that we'd tried to warn them. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. People were taking sides. Some were sending me private messages calling me competitive to a fault. Others were saying Karen needed to take responsibility for her own choices. Then things got interesting. One of our friends who'd been at the tournament decided to post her own response. She wrote a detailed account of everything that had happened, including how many times we'd tried to discourage Karen and her boyfriend from competing. She mentioned that she'd heard us warning them multiple times in the week leading up to the event. She also pointed out that Karen and her boyfriend had gotten destroyed in the practice rounds before we ever faced them, which proved it wasn't personal. Another friend who'd been there chimed in with video footage. Apparently, he'd been recording some of the matches for fun, and he had clips of Karen and her boyfriend getting eliminated quickly by other teams in the practice rounds. He also had footage of our match against the team with the predator masks, showing how badly we'd lost in the finals. He posted it all proving that we weren't just picking on Karen and her boyfriend. The tide started to turn. More people who'd been at the tournament started backing us up. They talked about how we'd been respectful during our match with Karen and her boyfriend, how we hadn't celebrated excessively or trash-talked them. Some even mentioned that they'd seen us try to encourage them after the match, only to be ignored. Karen's post started getting more negative comments toward her instead of us. People were calling her out for not taking responsibility and for trying to make us look bad just because she was embarrassed. Someone even pointed out that if we were really trying to embarrass her, we wouldn't have spent a week trying to talk her out of competing in the first place. Eventually, Karen deleted her post, but the damage was done. A lot of our mutual friends had seen the whole thing play out and had formed their opinions. Some of them reached out to apologize for jumping to conclusions. Others just stayed quiet. Karen and her boyfriend stopped talking to us completely. They unfriended us on social media and stopped showing up to group hangouts. At first, our friend group tried to include them, but they kept making excuses or just not responding. Eventually, everyone stopped trying. The whole situation was ridiculous. We'd tried to help them avoid embarrassment, they'd insisted on doing it anyway, and then they blamed us when it went exactly how we said it would. And now we were the bad guys in their story, even though everyone who was there knew the truth. My boyfriend and I talked about it a lot in the weeks after. We wondered if we should have just thrown the match to keep the peace. But every time we thought about it, we came to the same conclusion. We'd given them every opportunity to back out. We'd been honest with them about what to expect, and when they insisted on competing, we treated them with the same respect we'd treat any other competitor. That's all we could do. The worst part was that it affected our whole friend group. Some people felt like they had to choose sides, even though most of them agreed Karen was overreacting. A few of our group hangouts were awkward because people didn't know if they should invite Karen or us or both. Eventually, things settled down. Karen and her boyfriend drifted away from the group, and the rest of us went back to normal. We still do our competitions, and our friends still come watch when they want to. But now everyone's a lot more careful about what they sign up for. Nobody wants a repeat of the paintball incident. My daughter started high school this year, and honestly, she was nervous about it. She'd always been a bit of an introvert, struggling to make friends and find her place. Over the summer, she'd been working on building her confidence. She started experimenting with her style, trying new things, figuring out who she wanted to be. One thing she really wanted to do was add some color to her hair. Nothing crazy, just some pink highlights. We talked about it, looked at the school handbook together, and there was nothing in there about hair color. No dress code violations, no rules against it. So we went to a salon, got it done professionally, and she loved it. For the first time in a long time, I saw her genuinely excited about something. The first few days of school went fine. She got some compliments. Nobody made a big deal about it. Then she had her first class with this teacher, Karen. It was a Wednesday when my phone rang during my lunch break. The school secretary was on the line and her voice sounded strained. She told me I needed to come to the school right away because there had been an incident with my daughter. My heart dropped. I asked what happened, if she was hurt, but the secretary just kept saying I needed to come in. I left work right away, my mind racing through every possibility. An accident? A fight? Was she sick? When I got to the principal's office, I found my daughter sitting there crying. But it wasn't until I got closer that I saw why. Her beautiful hair, the highlights she'd been so proud of, were completely butchered. Chunks were missing, the lengths were uneven, and what remained of the pink was scattered in jagged pieces. She looked like someone had attacked her with scissors, because someone had. I knelt down next to her, trying to process what I was seeing. I asked her what happened and who did this to her. She could barely speak through her sobs. The principal stood there looking uncomfortable, and Karen, the teacher, sat in the corner with her arms crossed like she hadn't just assaulted a child. The principal explained that there had been an incident in Karen's classroom. He said that Karen felt my daughter's hair was inappropriate and took it upon herself to address the situation. I asked if she really cut my daughter's hair without permission and without even calling me first. Karen finally spoke up, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. She said that the hair color was a distraction to the other students. She claimed she gave my daughter an opportunity to fix it, and when she refused, Karen had to maintain order in her classroom. I asked her what she meant by giving her an opportunity. My daughter managed to explain between sobs that Karen had called her to the front of the class during the lesson. She said that Karen told her the hair was inappropriate and asked if she was going to dye it back. My daughter had responded that there was nothing in the rules about hair color and that I had approved it. Karen apparently got really mad and said my daughter was being disrespectful. Karen defended herself by saying that my daughter was being disrespectful. She insisted that she was the authority in that classroom, and when she tells a student something is inappropriate, they need to listen. I asked her point blank if she decided to cut my daughter's hair because of this. Karen said she was making a point. She claimed my daughter needed to understand that there are results for defying authority. My daughter continued explaining, her voice shaking. She said that Karen made her stand at the front of the room. Karen got scissors from her desk and just started cutting. Everyone was watching. Some kids were filming it on their phones. My daughter kept asking her to stop, but she wouldn't. Karen told her she needed to learn respect. I felt my blood boil. I turned to the principal and asked where he was during all this. I wanted to know how this happened without anyone stopping it. The principal said they were notified by another teacher who heard about it from students. By the time they got there, the damage was already done. I told him this wasn't damage to school property. This was assault. Karen had physically assaulted my daughter. Karen scoffed and said I was being dramatic. She said it was just hair and it would grow back. She added that maybe now my daughter would think twice before trying to look like some kind of delinquent. That was it. I stood up and turned to the principal directly. I told him I wanted her fired and that I was pressing criminal charges. I explained that this wasn't a disciplinary action, but an adult attacking a child with scissors. Karen's face went pale. She said I couldn't be serious and that she was just doing her job and maintaining classroom standards. I challenged her to show me in the handbook where it says hair color is against the rules. I told her to show me where it says teachers are allowed to physically alter students' appearances without parental consent. The principal shifted uncomfortably and admitted that the handbook doesn't specifically address unnatural hair colors. I told them exactly. My daughter had violated no policies, and even if she had, the appropriate response would be to call her parents, not to attack her with scissors in front of her classmates. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First to my partner, then to a lawyer, then to the police. Karen kept protesting, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that she was just enforcing classroom discipline. The principal tried to mediate, suggesting we could handle this internally, but I wasn't having it. The police arrived within 30 minutes. When I explained what happened and showed them my daughter's hair, they took statements right away. Other students had already posted videos on social media, which gave us clear evidence of what happened. You could hear my daughter asking her to stop, hear the other students gasping, and some even telling the teacher to stop. Karen was escorted out of the school that day. The school board held an emergency meeting and terminated her employment. The criminal charges moved forward, assault and battery. Her lawyer tried to argue that it was a school disciplinary matter, but the video evidence was damning. A grown woman holding down a teenager while cutting off her hair with scissors, ignoring her pleas to stop, all over something that wasn't even against school rules. My daughter had to get her hair cut into a pixie to even out the damage. She was devastated. The confidence she'd been building was shattered. But when we went to court and watched Karen face the results for what she'd done, something shifted. My daughter testified, calm and clear, explaining exactly what happened. The judge didn't hesitate in finding Karen guilty. When we left the courthouse, my daughter turned to me and said she wanted to go back to the salon. She told me she wanted to dye her whole pixie cut pink this time. I smiled. That was my kid. I've been living in this city for 28 years now. I know every shortcut, every decent coffee shop, every spot that gets too crowded during lunch hour. My partner and I had just finished grabbing sandwiches from our favorite deli when it happened. We were heading back to the office, taking our usual route through the town center. It was a Tuesday afternoon, so the pavements were packed with the usual mix of office workers, shoppers, and tourists, snapping photos of the old cathedral and historic buildings. We were just walking. Not running, not blocking anything specific, just walking at a normal pace like everyone else. I was telling my partner about this annoying email I'd gotten from a client that morning when suddenly this woman started screaming at us in French. At first, I didn't even realize she was yelling at us. I actually looked around to see who she was shouting at. But no, she was staring directly at us from about 10 yards away, waving her phone in the air and going off in rapid French. I don't speak French apart from the basics you learn in school, but her tone made it clear she was angry about something. My partner stopped walking and called out to her, asking what her problem was. She switched to English immediately, and I realized she'd been speaking French just to be dramatic or something. She snapped that she was taking a photo and we were in her way. I was genuinely confused for a second. I turned around to see what she was photographing. Behind us, way down the street, at least 50 yards away, was some bloke standing near a fountain. He had his back to us and appeared to be looking at something on his phone. That was apparently her friend or whoever she was trying to photograph. I couldn't believe it. This woman was trying to take a photo of someone who was practically in the next postal code, and she was angry at us for walking along a public pavement. I asked her how we were supposed to know she was taking a photo and he was so far away. She told me I should pay attention because she was clearly taking a photo. I pointed out that she could have been doing anything on her phone and I wasn't psychic. Look, I'm usually pretty considerate. If I see someone lining up a shot of a building or posing for a picture, I'll wait a few seconds or walk around them. That's just basic courtesy. But this situation was absurd. We were in one of the busiest parts of the city center. There were probably 30 other people walking around in various directions. Cars were driving past. Buses were stopping and starting. And this woman expected everyone to somehow telepathically know she was trying to photograph someone who was so far away he was practically a dot in the distance. She said that we'd ruined her photo and demanded we move so she could take it again. My partner and I exchanged a look. She was actually serious. My partner told her we were walking and weren't going to stand there for her convenience. She huffed and said this was typical, claiming that English people had no manners and that in France, people would have moved. That irritated me. I'm all for being polite, but she was the one who'd started yelling at strangers in the middle of the street. I told her that if she was in France, maybe she could take photos of people from reasonable distances. I reminded her this was a public pavement in a busy city and we didn't have to clear out for her photo shoot. She made this disgusted face like we were the unreasonable ones. Then she just repeated her demand, telling us to move because it would only take 2 seconds. I was done with this conversation. My lunch break was almost over, and I wasn't about to stand there arguing with an entitled tourist who thought she owned the entire street. I told her flat out that she didn't own the pavement and she could take her photo or not. I didn't care. We started walking again. She shouted something else in French that I didn't catch, but I could hear the anger in her voice. My partner and I just kept going. I wasn't going to let some random woman ruin my day because she had unrealistic expectations about photography in public spaces. When we walked away, I could still hear her complaining loudly to someone, probably the friend she'd been trying to photograph. My partner shook their head. My partner said they couldn't believe what just happened. I agreed. We made it back to the office a few minutes later and I tried to put the whole thing out of my mind. But it kept bugging me throughout the afternoon. Not because I felt bad, I didn't, but because I couldn't understand the logic. How do you get angry at strangers for walking in a public place? How do you expect people to know you're taking a photo when the subject is practically in another time zone? Later that evening, my partner and I were having dinner, and the topic came up again. My partner mentioned they'd looked back after we walked away and saw she was still standing there trying to get the shot. They said there were people everywhere. I wasn't surprised. I pointed out it was the city center on a weekday afternoon. Of course, there were people everywhere. My partner laughed and said she probably stood there for 20 minutes waiting for a clear pavement. That image made me laugh despite myself. I pictured her standing there, phone raised, getting increasingly frustrated when wave after wave of people walked past. The thing is, if she'd wanted a clear shot of her friend by the fountain, she should have walked closer to him, or picked a less busy time of day, or literally done anything other than yell at random people for existing in public. The whole thing just reinforced something I already knew. Some people genuinely believe their needs are more important than everyone else's. They expect the world to bend around them, and when it doesn't, they throw tantrums. I've dealt with enough difficult people in my life to recognize the type. This woman was a perfect example. She saw a minor inconvenience and decided everyone else was the problem instead of questioning whether her expectations were reasonable. The more I thought about it, the more ridiculous it seemed. Imagine standing in one of the busiest spots in the city and expecting a completely empty frame for your photo. It was like going to the beach on a hot summer day and being angry that other people were there. I've been teaching high school English for about 6 years now. The kids can be tough sometimes, but you learn to roll with it. I lost my dad when I was in college, so I've had years to process it, but it still stings when people treat death like a punchline without thinking. This day started like any other Tuesday. Third period was my sophomore class, and I'd assigned them a reading response over the weekend. Nothing major, just a page analyzing a chapter from the book we were working through. When students filed in, I reminded them to pass their homework forward. Most kids complied right away, digging through their backpacks and handing crumpled papers to the person in front of them. But I noticed one student in the middle row just sitting there, arms crossed, with this smirk on his face. Let's call him the troublemaker because that's exactly what he was trying to be. I walked down the aisle collecting papers from students who hadn't passed theirs up yet. When I reached him, I asked where his homework was. He told me casually that he couldn't do it. I pressed him for a reason, keeping my tone neutral but firm. He leaned back in his chair, still wearing that stupid grin, like he'd come up with the most brilliant excuse in the world. Then he said his dad had died, dropping it like it was the punchline to some joke. A few students nearby gasped or looked uncomfortable. I just stood there for a second, letting his words hang in the air. I could tell immediately he was lying. His tone was too casual, too pleased with himself. He thought he'd found the ultimate get-out-of-homework-free card. I've dealt with a lot in this job. Kids lying about why they didn't do their work, kids trying to shock me, kids testing boundaries. But joking about a dead parent, that crossed a line. I asked him why he thought that was funny. His smirk faltered just a little. Then I told him plainly that my dad was dead. The smirk disappeared completely. A few students shifted in their seats. I looked over at my student aide who was sitting at a desk near the front organizing some papers for me. We'd worked together for almost 2 years, and she'd opened up to me before about losing her father when she was younger. I mentioned that her dad was dead too. My student aide looked up and nodded quietly. She didn't seem upset. We'd talked about this kind of thing before, how sometimes kids say thoughtless things without realizing the weight of their words. Then, from a couple seats back, another voice piped up. It was a quiet kid who usually kept to himself. He said his dad was dead too, his voice matter-of-fact but heavy with truth. I hadn't known that. He'd never mentioned it before, but the way he said it told me it was real. I acknowledged all three of us and commented that it looked like we had a little dead dad's club in the classroom. The troublemaker's face had gone completely pale. All the color drained right out of it. He sank down in his seat and I could see his hands trembling slightly when he gripped the edge of his desk. He apologized quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The cockiness was gone. The joke had backfired spectacularly. I didn't want to humiliate him, but I did want him to understand why what he'd said was wrong. I kept my voice calm and told him I understood that he probably didn't do his homework and panicked when I asked about it. But I explained that he needed to understand that death wasn't something to joke about. I told him he never knew what someone else was going through or what they'd lost. He apologized again, admitting he hadn't thought about it. I pointed out that was exactly the problem. He hadn't thought, and that's what I needed him to do from now on. Think before he spoke, especially when making jokes about serious things. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. The rest of the class was silent, watching the exchange. I told him I still needed that homework and that he could turn it in tomorrow for half credit. He agreed immediately, promising he'd have it done. His voice was small and sincere. I moved on with the lesson, but I could tell the moment had stuck with him. He didn't participate much for the rest of class, which was unusual for him. He was typically one of the louder students, always ready with a comment or joke. But today he just sat quietly, taking notes. When class ended and most students had filed out, he approached my desk. My student aide was still there, finishing up some filing. He asked if he could talk to me for a second. I told him sure. He said he really was sorry about what he'd said earlier. He admitted it was stupid and explained he just didn't want to admit he'd forgotten to do the homework because he'd been playing video games all weekend. I told him I appreciated his honesty now and that this approach was much better than making up stories. He said he hadn't realized that so many people dealt with losing a parent. He said it never really occurred to him that it was so common. I explained that a lot of people did deal with it, and even if nobody in that room had a dead parent, it still wouldn't have been funny. But I said I was glad this helped him understand why. He nodded and started to leave, then turned back. He said something that surprised me. He asked if it was weird that he felt relieved his dad was alive now. He explained he'd been annoyed at his father that morning for making him take out the trash, but now he was just glad his dad was around to annoy him. I smiled at that and told him it wasn't weird at all. I said that was called perspective. My student aide spoke up from across the room, suggesting maybe he should call his dad later and tell him he loved him or something. He said, yeah, maybe he would. Then he left. I sat down at my desk. My student aide looked over at me and said that was intense. I agreed but said it was necessary. She asked if I thought he'd learned something. I told her I thought so, or at least I hope so. She went back to her filing and I started grading the homework that had been turned in. The troublemaker's empty spot in the pile reminded me of the whole exchange. The next day, he was the first one to walk into class. He walked straight to my desk and handed me his homework before taking his seat. It was neatly written, complete, and actually pretty thoughtful. At the top, he'd written a small note apologizing again about yesterday. I gave him a nod, and he smiled back, relieved. For the rest of the semester, he never tried to pull anything like that again. In fact, he became one of my more reliable students. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.